Welcome viewers to a casual facecam video. Hi, I am Great Balance. Wanted to quickly introduce myself. You might see me in future explanation videos that probably is just better quality to have the face in it, so I'll try to make it work. Right now it's very scuffed, my setup with the webcam. It's literally my phone being used, connected to my computer with a Amazon box with my mic holding my phone in place on top of it. It's super scuffed, but we're making it work. And hello there. I wanted to make a video talking about a certain topic in Pokemon Pocket that I thought would be kind of valuable to talk about. Maybe it's not valuable, but I wanted to complain. I just wanted to complain. I wanted to complain about two specific cards. And one of them, a lot of people have complained about. One of them, I feel like more and more people are going to start complaining about the longer the game goes on. One of those is Misty. Everyone knows about Misty. Everyone has lost to Misty, and everyone has laughed at their opponents for flipping tails on Misty. It used to be a card that was just like, hey, I can win the game if I have this, or I lose the game if I don't get it. If I get the tails in a bad spot. With progressively though, with how water decks structure themselves, with how especially Gyarados structures itself, with how Manaphy also ramps up energy for water Pokemon, Misty ends up not being really a risk anymore. At times, most of the times when it's played now, it's, hey, this is just a chance for me to win the game, or nothing happens, or we can just play the game as normal. Which is not really what a card like that is supposed to do. You're not supposed to really have a card like that in a card game. That it's not very high risk, but it's very high reward. So just low risk, high reward cards are often usually cards that get banned in ban list card games. And this is a card that the longer the game goes and the more water cards that get printed, the more and more we are going to see people asking for this card to get banned. Because it's not healthy to have a card that's just not risky at all inherently to play. It only takes your supporter for the turn pretty much. Most of the time you are probably going to play that supporter anyway during the turn. And the fact that it has a chance to just completely win the game, it's like one energy is enough to just win the game. With how valuable energy is, like energy is like mana in like other card games, in Hearthstone, in Magic the Gathering. If you're getting an extra mana every game, how insane is that, right? One extra mana is insane. One extra energy is insane in this game. And having that one extra energy is just the difference between winning and just winning the game on the spot and having to play out a game fairly, which is where Gyarados kind of feels like we can play a fair game. No, we can play a game where you completely brick and you just lose. We can play a game that's fair, or 50% of the time you will just have Misty and you will just win the game. With heads or even multiple heads, and definitely the game is over. The problem with Misty is that the expected outcome, if you are to take the average outcome of the total summation of all Misty outcomes of infinite Misties, you would get one head, right? If you total an infinite amount of Misties played, and if you take the average outcome, you take the limit, you will get one head on average, which means that it's not exactly what it is, but on average, Misty, the card reads, choose one of your water Pokemon and attach a water energy to it. Just inherently, on average, that's what it reads. That's completely problematic. There is no other card in the game that's like that currently. And I don't think they're going to print a card like that in a game for a very long time. All of the other energy generation cards are super specific when it comes to, like, you look at a card like Brock compared to Misty, it's not even close what the two cards can do. The fact that Brock is so limited with the Pokemon that you can use. If you look at Lieutenant Surge, this was a card that had limited amount of Pokemon that you could use. It didn't even generate energy. It only moved energy. Water being so flexible with its energy, it even has Vaporeon, right? Which means that you can just get unlimited energy from your bench to your active spot, however many times that you want to do that in a game, as long as you have Vaporeon alive. It's not been a big player in the metagame recently, but it is still a water card that is alongside Misty. Just it creates so many situations that are difficult, so difficult and so backbreaking to play around, and it just usually ends up in losses. And that's why I don't think they'll ban cards. I don't think this is the direction that the developers are going to take the game. I believe that just rotations are ultimately going to happen, but we're gonna be a while until we see a rotation, right? It's going to be at least 4 or 5 sets until, like, full sets, until you see an actual rotation, which means that we're going to be seeing this card for a long time. And the more water cards that come out, the more and more problematic it will become, and it's just a never-ending cycle. It just seems like water gets so much favoritism from the developers, like with cards like Irida. Even, like, it seems like they have so many tools that other classes just simply don't have, and Misty is the absolute core part of that. They simply put, there is a card in every water deck. There are 2 cards, excuse me, because you can run 2 copies, that reads, if you play this card, win the game, basically. Because if you get an energy, you win the game. And on average, you're getting 1 energy per play of Misty. So the fact that there's just a card that does that in the game right now, even in this current state with how powerful it is, even with the kind of wrapping that we have in energy, is still absurd. And it needs to be addressed. Something needs to be addressed. Otherwise, water decks will always be a problem. And even if it's not the absolute king of the meta right now, there's a reason that Gyarados is the most consistent way that you can climb in this current meta game. And it's because you play fair games, but sometimes you can just scam wins. And that's where you can just get those extra wins from. You can just get a standard 50% with just scamming wins. You'll just raise yourself to a 55% deck, and then you're suddenly just climbing and climbing and climbing. Play thousands of games, you will hit rank 1. But that's enough about Misty. People have been complaining about this card for a long time. The more interesting card to talk about is Red. Why Red is such a problem, and why I believe myself that it was a huge mistake to release Red, is quite simple, actually. Giovanni was a strong card. It was a very viable choice in multiple different deck archetypes that were trying to get it on specific benchmarks, right? Specific hit point benchmarks. Pokemon Pocket is a game where stats of Pokemon are very, very, very intentional. The attack and health, so whatever damage a Pokemon can do, and the health, the HP of a Pokemon, are absolutely calculated to a very, very, they're very, very calculated, right? They're very specific for, to lose specific things and to win to specific things. Giovanni was the card that could help you get past that breakpoint. More damage is always better than more survivability when it comes to any game, right? Just because you want to be able to win a game rather than be able to, hey, maybe not lose the game, right? So the fact that there's already a strong card that is viable in multiple different archetypes, that is seeing play in multiple different archetypes in tournaments, the fact that that card gets buffed by double, because the difference between 10 and 20 is basically the same thing as 1 and 2, right? If you look at any card game that has been in the history of card games, if a card gets buffed from 2 to 1 or nerfed from 1 to 2, 99% of the time, the card goes from instantly, like, just super strong to unviable if it goes from 1 to 2, or if it goes from 2 to 1, and I'm talking about mana cost, right? In the case of like a Hearthstone or a Magic the Gathering, if you go from 2 cost to 1, and you usually see it in Hearthstone only, they don't nerf and buff cards in Magic, but in Hearthstone, if a card went from 2 to 1, instantly broke the game, because the difference between 2 and 1 is completely double. It's more of a ratio, more of a change than any other change except for 1 to 0, right? But that no company has ever made the mistake of making a card from 1 to 0. If they have, then that's a huge mistake. It's better than taking a card from 3 to 2, way better than 4 to 3, way better than 4 to 5 to 4. Always the biggest buff has been a 2-mana card going to a 1-mana card. And so if you have a card that's going literally double the power, so going from 10 damage, so 1 to 2, 20 damage, you are doubling the power of the card that was already strong. And so it's running everything now. It's running literally everything. The fact that you have to be killing EX Pokemon is a non-condition in most metagames. The way that the design philosophy of the Pokemon company is, or the developers are, is that EX Pokemon will always be strong and be the running Pokemon of the metagame. We haven't seen a metagame where that wasn't the case yet. So, if that's not a condition, you literally have just released a double power Giovanni. Of course, every deck is gonna want to run one or two of those, because now every Pokemon just has plus 20 damage on each of their numbers, and that's completely absurd in a game which has very calculated numbers. Like, specific Pokemon are supposed to lose specific Pokemon. Gyarados is never supposed to deal 160 damage. It was never supposed to happen. When they made Gyarados months ago, in December of last year, they never considered that it would be doing 160 damage, 180 damage total if you take Rocky Helmet as well. Right? They never considered that this would be a possibility. And now it's a reality. And the reality is that you're having now a metagame which is completely dictated by EX Pokemon one-shotting other EX Pokemon. When you could have, if they had simply not released that card, you'd see a completely different metagame right now. The metagame would not be full of Giratinas and Gyarados. Yes, Giratina would be strong. Yes, Gyarados would be strong. They wouldn't be as backbreaking as they are now because they aren't one-shotting the entire metagame, the entire roster of Pokemon, right? The entire roster of Pokemon has less than 170 HP. Like, there's almost no Pokemon with 180 HP or plus except Charizard, Blastoise, Gyarados. Like, very rare exceptions will have 180 HP plus, right? The highest HP Pokemon in the game is 190 with Venusaur EX from the base set, and that has its own issues, right? So you are giving all these powerful EX Pokemon with high HP total also just the ability to one-shot everything, and this is what's caused this one-shot EX big boy metagame, right? And I truly believe that the card's just going to get stronger and stronger. The reality of trainer cards is that they are infinitely stronger than Pokemon because they are fittable in any deck. Pokemon will only be good in the decks that those Pokemon are good in, right? You will only have a core of Pokemon that are good in those, like, that specific deck. Like, very rarely do you get the case of like splashable Pokemon. Like, the only thing that you can really get is like fighting decks, which have that like package of fighting Pokemon you can choose between. Do you want Sudowoodo, Hitmonlee, things like that? Usually though, it's like, hey, this specific Pokemon is good with these other specific Pokemon that you will use in this specific deck that's going to be used with a group of trainers. And that group of trainers is going to be assisting these Pokemon, and those are the flexible picks. Because those are the flexible picks, the strongest one will always want to rise to the top. Which is why you always see people running Professor's Research, always see people running Misty, always see people running Red, always see people running Cyrus and Sabrina. Every single tournament deck will always run one of Sabrina and Cyrus to make sure your opponent plays around both. Like, these are just common things that are known to happen because these trainers are so flexible. They are splashable in any deck because they are not restricted by the deck and like energy types, right? And that's where Red is going to just get stronger and stronger as new cards get released. I don't know how they get out of a metagame like this. The only way to get out of a metagame like this is to make an aggressive metagame, like super strong aggressive cards, like Skarmory, but stronger, like stronger and more consistent. Maybe not stronger, but more consistent. And more backup for these Pokemon as well, because a lot of times these aggressive decks don't have like a proper strong finisher to curve into that is super consistent. The closest thing that you might be able to find is like a Carnivine Arceus deck to curve into things. However, the problem with that deck is that you must have a 2-card combo of Carnivine and Arceus in the turn that you want to attack with Carnivine. There's so many issues with trying to deal big number damage right now in early turns, which would really help against these big boy EXs, and I think that's a design philosophy that they're going to change with the next expansion that's coming out next week. So you would hope so, because this is the only way that we're going to get out of this metagame. Otherwise, we're going to see a continuation of just Red buffing even more the new, bigger one-shot things that are going to kill one shot even more, the bigger one shot. Like, it's gonna be a cycle that just falls on top of itself, and it's shocking to me that they released the Red as early as they did. I thought it would be at least a year of the game being out before they would release plus 20 damage on your Pokemon. Like, that's crazy that a plus 10 damage, which was still very, very strong, it just gets buffed by double. Like, unbelievable that they released that card. And so both Misty and Red, I foresee these two cards continuing to be problems, and something needs to be addressed. Like, something needs to be addressed, or else these cards will continue to be issues that everyone's going to keep complaining about. And the way that you address them is just, I mean, hey, just get rid of, like, just ban them. I know that's not a thing that they're going to do, but it's the way. These two cards are total outliers when it comes to the power level. Like, you need cards like Sabrina and Cyrus in the game, like, obviously, but these two cards specifically are total outliers when it comes to power. And it's just because they're simply like, there's clear explanations as to why. One is just there's not a card like it that literally is just free ramp, and there's another card which says, hey, double the power of a previous card that's strong. Like, both these cards inherently have broken properties to them which just shouldn't exist, and are going to cause the game more and more uncompetitive issues. But as I said, probably not going to happen. Probably we're going to continue with this. The best thing to do is just come up with cards that are more aggressive and that are not helping the water decks with their aggressive. Because even if you just make an aggressive water deck, Misty is still strong in a deck like that. So they're very problematic. I just wanted to come out and just chat about it, see what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you. You may see me in the next one.